The unification of Romulans and Vulcans has been something heavily sought after throughout the series, from both sides. It is ironic many scoff at the thought of a Vulcan-Romulan integration when you consider that so many episodes show some of the most influential Vulcans pushing for it. Unfortunately, a Romulan's gonna do what a Romulan's gonna do. I have to say that when I break down the plans of the Romulans to invade Romulus, I'm pretty impressed, save for one detail, but we'll get into that later. As I've discussed in previous videos, we see that while the leadership of the Romulan Star Empire wished to continue the status quo by continuing conflict with Starfleet and interfere in internal matters in other powers such as the Klingons, the populace was slowly losing its appetite. In most provinces of Romulus, groups were beginning to form that wanted to be more peaceful, more open to those outside of their realm. A cultural revolution was brewing. The old guard had to do something, and they came up with an honest-to-God, interesting solution. Utilizing a Romulan senior representative that had garnered a relationship with one of the most honored ambassadors of the Federation, they would concoct a plan to strike a blow at the Federation and quell the cultural shift. A councilman in the Senate would reach out to Spock, encouraging him to come to Romulus. The senator would then pretend to work with Spock to court the proconsul, basically the leader of the Romulans, into a shift away from what had been. Not only would this push lead to better relations with the Federation, but for a reunification with Vulcan. I've historically talked about how both Romulans and Vulcans wished to reunify. I still believe that, but it's interesting to see Sela's disdain for them in the future. There has always been apparently an undercurrent of need for Romulans and Vulcans to come back together at some point, but both sides don't appear to like each other all that much. Reminds me of human families to a degree. Back to the breakdown proper, the senator would garner the trust of Spock, and the proconsul would seem very sympathetic to reunification. It's ironic how much these moves would shake the Federation and Starfleet. The dialogue of the Admiral leads us to believe that while Starfleet wants peaceful relations, they don't trust Romulans enough to actually do it. When we listen to Spock, he leads us to believe that he would have been stopped by the Federation and Starfleet themselves. Starfleet fears Spock going to Romulus. They fear the Romulans so much that they aren't willing to give peace a chance. This is honestly one of the few times it seems like Starfleet is not willing to make a huge gamble for peace. It's intriguing. Starfleet would dispatch Captain Picard and Data to find and retrieve Spock. Because when you fear the information Spock could give the Romulans, you send the captain of the flagship and an android that remembers everything he sees. Because that makes logical sense to do when you're up against a species that has ways of extracting information even if the subject doesn't want to and is highly resistant. Just on point, Starfleet Admiralty. After being dispatched, Picard and Data would find Spock. At first, Picard would be skeptical, but ultimately Spock would be able to make him at least consider that the Romulan Star Empire was having a revolution. Spock, being cautiously optimistic himself, would continue to work with the Senator and the proconsul. However, as we know, this was all a deception. The Romulans would make their move, capturing Spock, Data, and Picard. It would be at this point that 3 Vulcan transports that had been reconstructed and a Romulan escort begin making its way through the Romulan neutral zone. We'll discuss more about this escort after this. Hey guys, I want to take a moment to stop and say thank you. Because of fans like you, I am more and more coming to a point where YouTube overreaction and CBS greed isn't an issue. We are already about a third of the way to my goal to ensure that I don't have to worry about content ID or being shut down. If you'd like to help attain that goal, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/lorereloaded, giving through PayPal in the link below, or becoming a subscribe star, again, in the links below. The more I get, the more I'm able to use clips and expand what I do to continue to entertain you. If only a fraction of a fraction that watch my videos gave $1 to Patreon, we would be there in less than a day. Thanks for considering. Now let's get back to it. Let me stop here a moment and talk about the convoy. It's funny. when we are first introduced to the neutral zone, it's stated several times that going into the neutral zone itself would mean instant war, and yet both sides enter into the neutral zone like it's a fracking playground. I'm just saying. When the transports are challenged by the Enterprise, the Vulcan ship states that Ambassador Spock is making an announcement and they were on their way to Vulcan. The Enterprise, not being complete idiots, would stay back but still close to where they are, the crew obviously being confused. Looking back at what was happening on Romulus, Sela tells Spock he is required to make a speech, letting him know he could change some words here and there. Spock refuses, and Sela states she will kill him if he doesn't. Spock's answer is that it's likely they're dead regardless, so he chooses not to help. This, in my opinion, is the commander's first misstep. Sela shouldn't have threatened him. She should have offered to make the transition of Vulcan more peaceful. She could appeal to his sense to protect others. With Spock's help, the invasion would be quick and decisive. Vulcan, Starfleet personnel, and Romulan Centurions' deaths would be minimal. However, without his help, the Battle of Vulcan would be bloody. Very bloody. His assistance would ensure that innocent people wouldn't die. Helping her in this way is only logical. Of course, she wouldn't use this perfect opportunity, again threatening to kill him, and he would be obstinate. Her next blunder was not immediately having them taken to prison and tortured for all their information. I mean, she should have tortured the living hell out of them and got every piece of information she could. And of course, the last mistake she would make was not deactivating literally every console in the room and leaving them alone with no guards. Come on, Sela, this is Bush League. But let's talk about the plan for a minute. Even without Spock, the Romulans would utilize a holographic image to portray him and send a message of peace. Unlike mustache-twirling villains, Sela didn't actually expect this to work. She just needed to confuse Starfleet Command and Federation officials long enough to get troops on the planet. Now let me say this, getting troops on the planet and a few warbirds in space, entrenching and demanding reunification, it's not the best long-term plan, but it's not stupid and it is a great short-term plan. The stupid piece is thinking that you'll only be able to hold the planet with 2,000 soldiers. Sela tries to explain this away, that they'll move on the capital, take it, and then have warbirds as backup. Taking the capital of a nation is a great idea if you're only fighting on one planet, or you're taking the capital planet in a galactic battle. But they aren't fighting in a galactic battle in this sense, and they aren't taking the capital planet of the Federation. And Sela, for some reason, doesn't understand that this is going to mean all-out war. They are only attacking one specific planet. Taking the capital of Vulcan will do jack all in the long run, though. I mean, seriously, do the Romulans think that the Vulcan capital matters? That's as stupid as agreeing not to develop cloaking technology with a race that already has it. Okay, let's say this plan works to a T. You have at least 2 or 3 warbirds that surround the planet. Troops secure Vulcan, and it is firmly in the control of the Romulan Star Empire. Vulcan is just a jump, hop, and a skip from both Earth and Andoria. You remember those 2 planets, the ones that have species that historically are known for killing anything that pisses them off. It literally was the business of Andorians and humans to genocide anything that was an affront to them. And business was exceptionally good for them historically. Now, while Romulans are all about taking risks, I would not bet on humans and Andorians backing down from this fight. Even if we assume that the humans and Andorians are not going to enjoy making the roads run green, you have annexed a planet right next to the capital of the Federation. There is no way that all of the other members would allow this to occur. So if you're going to do this, you need more than 2,000 soldiers and 3 warbirds to take the planet. Let's time the soldiers by about 100 and the warbirds by about 10, because that's what you're going to need to hold Vulcan. But logical breakdowns aside, we wouldn't see what would occur because the plan would fail due to Spock being able to get out a message that it was an invasion. This would lead to a standoff between the Vulcan transports carrying Romulan troops, at least 1 D'Deridex-class warship, and the Enterprise D. This does present a moment that is confusing to me. Instead of continuing with the operation, Romulan forces would pull back. This I do agree with. However, when the Enterprise advises that the Vulcan transports would be required to stay, the Romulans destroy the vessels, killing their own soldiers. Again, going to war over 3 Vulcan transports isn't something that I think they should do. I agree that allowing the Federation to have those ships and withdrawing is fine, but not without the troops. Now, it is a roll of the dice. I'll give you that. You don't really want to push the Pinkskins to the thin ice. And it would be tense, but I do think Starfleet would blink. Dialogue leads us to believe that there are more than one D'deridex ships in that area. So have 2 or 3 warships show up in a standoff with the Enterprise D. Advise the Enterprise that they can have the transports, but the Romulan soldiers are coming home. Have one ship lower shields and begin transport. If the Enterprise tries to take any of the soldiers or fire on them, destroy it. Even if it's only one ship, one D'deridex, keep your weapons hot, lower your shields, and tell them that you are taking your people home. And if Riker says anything, remind him that there are families on his ship, and even if he wins the fight, it's probable at least some of those innocent civilians would be killed. Possibly even the children they have on board. Look, I do think Riker does awesome in this episode and shows to be a great military leader in the show. And I don't think he would let the Romulans get away with too much. But I do sincerely think that he would back down. It's not worth civilians dying, and they do get to keep the transports. But my rants aside, this is not to be. The Romulans again would kill their own people and retreat. And of course, a plan to annex a founding member of the Federation would result in the Federation Council and Starfleet doing absolutely nothing. The next time we see the Romulans, they are being saved by the Enterprise, and then Deanna becomes one. I guess maybe the Romulans needed to crash a ship into a planet rather than go literally anywhere else that would be safe.